Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us for our first Clean Truck Strategy public meeting. My name is Sophie Schulman, and I lead the Office of Innovative Mobility at the Colorado Department of Transportation. Hopefully you can see my screen now, which is the beginning of this presentation. I'm going to introduce a few of my state colleagues that are on the webinar as well. We are going to turn off our video while we're giving the presentation just to provide a little extra bandwidth. We've heard that sometimes that makes things slow for folks watching it. So we'll turn it back on when we get to the public comment section and to answer questions. So I'm just going to list everybody who's on, and folks will get a chance to speak throughout the presentation or to answer questions as well. I have Will Tour, who's the Executive Director of the Colorado Energy Office. Shoshana Liu, the Executive Director of the Colorado Department of Transportation, should be joining us at some point. I have Kay Kelly from the Colorado Energy Office as well. We have Mike King from Colorado Department of Transportation, and Clay Clark and Lauren McDonnell from CDPHE, which is the Department of Public Health and Environment. I know there are a few other folks in the audience, but those are the main folks that'll be speaking today. All right, so I'm going to jump into the presentation. If folks can turn off their webcams, that would be great. All right, so just a couple guidelines on how to use GoToWebinar. In case you're not familiar with this service, I know we're all learning a lot about how to use all these different services these days. There's a little red button on the top there that lets you minimize or expand the control panel. The little mute microphone mute and unmute button, everyone should be muted at the moment, but we may unmute you when you are out for public comment. There's a little screen button there that'll allow you to do full screen or window view, and then you can raise your hand. So if you haven't pre-registered for public comment and we do have time, then please do raise your hand if you have an additional comment that you'd like to share when we get to that section. There is a handout tab. I believe right now we have a copy of the press release that announced our clean truck strategy. And then we also have a chat box where you can put in questions for the CDOT and CEO and CDPHE team. All right, so a few ground rules. Before we get into this. Again, thank you for joining us. We really want to, give folks the opportunity to hear what we're doing, provide comments. This is not your last opportunity, but this is really a great opportunity for us to get everyone together. As I mentioned, folks are automatically muted, but we will unmute you for your public comment. I think I covered all of this already, but you can also raise your hand. And we are recording this session, so that's really going to help us go back and listen to everyone's public comment, and we will provide a link to these slides after the meeting. We're also creating a frequently asked questions document, so if we don't get a chance to answer your questions today, we will have the opportunity to do that in the future. And then unfortunately, we weren't able to simultaneously translate this into Spanish, but we will be looking into that for future public meetings. We will also use this recording and provide Spanish translation in the future of everything that was discussed today. And then also our clean truck strategy email address, which I'll share shortly. You can send questions in Spanish or in any other language, and we will do our best to answer those as you have them. I do want to just set the stage a little bit. This is a very broad topic. There are going to be a lot of different opinions, and we really, want to make sure that everyone is heard, which means keeping your comments brief and to the point and relevant to this conversation. We ask that you treat everyone in this meeting with respect, avoid any harsh language or personal attacks. And I think in particular, please be patient with us if we have any technical difficulties. We're all adjusting to doing these meetings virtually, and we appreciate your patience if anything goes wrong. I'm prepared that if my internet goes out, that someone else from our excellent state team will be able to jump in. All right, so jumping into the substance of today, this is our agenda. So we're going to give a brief presentation on what we're thinking for this clean truck strategy, how the different things that we're considering. And then we'll go into public comment. Those will be limited to 2 minutes each to allow for as many people to participate as possible. And then, if time allows, we will respond to questions that we've received, either pre-registered questions or additional questions if we have time from the chat box and commenters. So before I jump into the goals, I really want to, emphasize that freight is a really critical part of Colorado's economy. You know, $341 billion worth of products into and out of Colorado in 2016 alone. We all know, especially during the COVID pandemic, that this is an incredibly important part of our economy. It keeps us all fed and you know, with all of the goods that we need to live our lives. So we certainly want to support that. We want to work collaboratively with the freight sector to see if there are opportunities to prepare for the future to improve air quality and reduce greenhouse gas emissions across Colorado. You know, one important point is that transportation is a very large part of greenhouse gas emissions and air quality pollutants, and medium and heavy duty trucks are a significant portion of that of those emissions. And so that's partly why we're tackling this strategy, why we're looking at a number of different holistic solutions to try to address these impacts. And you know, one thing I'll note is that the Denver metro area is currently in serious non-attainment for ozone and is facing a downgrade to severe non-attainment, which you know, really, as you think about freight, we know that a lot of those air quality impacts disproportionately impact vulnerable communities in certain parts of our state, and we really want to make sure that you know, we're factoring in how all of these different emissions and pollutants impact our most vulnerable communities. So just to set the stage, you're going to hear probably in folks' comments and in some of what I'm going to talk about, and my colleagues are going to talk about the use of different terms of weight classes for medium and heavy duty vehicles. So just wanted to give folks a little bit of a graphic here to set the stage that these, you know, can really run anywhere from class 1 all the way to class 8 by weight. And it's really everything from, you know, your long haul truck that goes cross country, but all the way down to a much smaller van, utility van that is much lighter and is used for sometimes much shorter trips, you know, within an urban area or from an urban area to a suburban area. But really thinking about how these vehicles are used is going to be critical in identifying which ones are going to be easier or more difficult to electrify. And then, you know, we talk a little bit about zero emission vehicles. This is really can be defined a lot of different ways, and typically we take a pretty comprehensive approach, but I want to make sure that, you know, before I start using acronyms, that we've defined these for folks. So battery electric vehicles are vehicles that, you know, use a battery to be charged to power the vehicle, and those are charged externally. Typically, when we're talking about a battery electric vehicle, it's one that is purely electric, whereas a plug-in hybrid electric vehicle is one that has a battery that can be charged externally, but also has a hybrid engine with an internal combustion engine as part of the system. A hydrogen fuel cell vehicle is powered through hydrogen. This can be, you know, zero emission, zero tailpipe emissions, and zero emission depending on how the hydrogen is produced. And then we'll also talk about other potential options such as renewable natural gas, things like hybrid refrigeration units, other opportunities to really clean up these vehicles. But you know, there's a number of different solutions on the table, and it'll depend on sort of technology readiness and use cases of which ones we would be most interested in talking about. So now I'm going to go into all of the different elements that we're considering as part of the clean truck strategy. And again, I'll emphasize there's a reason you've got the Energy Office, the Department of Transportation, and the Department of Public Health and Environment on this meeting today. We're working very closely together, as well as with the Colorado Motor Carriers Association, who was a key partner in thinking about this strategy and will be a key partner moving forward as we think about how we engage fleets across Colorado. So there's a number of different elements here. I'm going to go through these pretty quickly, but I want folks to think of these as a menu of options. We haven't made any decisions about these. These are things that we're looking at, considering, and determining which ones are going to be the most impactful. And of course, if there are any other ideas that folks have, we're certainly open to hearing them, and that's part of why we want to talk to you all today. So first of all, really looking at opportunities for fleet turnover, which obviously can include zero emission vehicles, as we just talked about, but also opportunities to reduce emissions from some of the oldest, highest emitting diesel vehicles, which could be replaced with newer vehicles that have much better air quality impacts than some of those older vehicles. So looking at incentives and other tools that we can use to help encourage that. Infrastructure is going to be an incredibly important part of this conversation. As we know on the light duty side, it's a huge barrier to adoption, and we certainly want to focus on opportunities to think about what we need to plan for now for the infrastructure needs of sort of the long-term zero emission vehicle infrastructure needs, but also the short-term needs for pilots and for folks that are going to be charging behind a fleet. Behind the fence is the term that we use, but fleet vehicles that have a depot where they can charge, and starting to get the infrastructure ready for that today as fleets are starting to adopt. We're also looking at opportunities to identify key freight corridors and see where they overlap with highway projects. So obviously, I represent the Department of Transportation, and we're working on a number of different highway projects that, potentially in the future could have a nexus with where we might want to install medium and heavy duty zero emission fueling infrastructure. And so that's something we're examining for any opportunities to do complementary work. Working with major fleet providers, this is, we've heard, I think, a lot of great news stories about some of the early adopters that are thinking about their company sustainability and their opportunities for electrification, and we want that to happen in Colorado. We want to make sure that we're encouraging that type of development and trying to work together, including opportunities for low-hanging fruit, like things like refrigerated trailers, where there might be opportunities to start to electrify at least parts of the vehicles. We are looking at the advanced clean truck standards, which California has adopted. We're going to go into that a little bit more in the future slides, so I'll keep it short for now, but really examining the potential of what this standard can do, including potential regulatory flexibilities that Colorado might be able to employ. Examining last mile freight delivery and pickup. This is something that's really interesting, especially for near-term electrification. As I mentioned, the use cycle is really important. If these vehicles are, going shorter distances, potentially smaller vehicles that you need for a dense downtown area, those might be great opportunities for vehicles that actually could be electrified today. And there are a lot of really exciting things happening in this space, creative use of things like storage lockers to combine trips. So there's really a lot of opportunities to reduce emissions now for some of these dense urban areas, which also tend to be areas where there's poor air quality. And so we think there's a lot of really great opportunity there. It's going to be really important to make sure that dealerships and maintenance shops are ready to fix these vehicles, to address any issues that these vehicles have. And so training and workforce development is going to be really important. And it's something that we can start now, know what the needs are in order to repair some of these vehicles. And so really taking the opportunity to train a new set of folks on how to repair these vehicles will be a key focus. And then looking at opportunities to utilize existing programs like the voluntary EPA Smart Way program, which really provides a lot of best practices and information to fleets that are interested in being good actors and helping to reduce emissions from their fleets. And then finally, the state of Colorado can lead by example through green procurement. We already do this a lot in a number of different ways, but this is a great opportunity for us, especially CDOT. We have a number of medium and heavy duty vehicles that we utilize and looking for opportunities to help spur the market, to help share best practices and successes, not only with the private sector, but also with our local government partners, with our utility partners who may also be interested in helping to lead by example. You may have also seen that we joined a multi-state Memorandum of Understanding with several other states across the country, really looking at the opportunity to boost the market for zero emission medium and heavy duty vehicles, really setting these targets, but trying to find opportunities to work together with our state partners to really evaluate all of the different strategies and find ways that we can move the market together. As I mentioned earlier, I'm going to just give a little bit of background on some of the regulations that that California is exploring, and that Colorado is studying, really to see, sort of what would these impacts be in Colorado? Are there regulatory flexibilities that we could take advantage of, and really just seeing if these are options that we should consider. So as I mentioned, California adopted the Advanced Clean Truck standard, which is similar to the rule on the light duty side, in that it requires manufacturers to sell an increasing percentage of class 2B through 8 zero emission trucks from 2024 to 2035. It also has a requirement for fleets and large employers to report information about their shipments, their shuttle services, and their fleet operations, so that they can use that information to inform future strategies. There's another standard that CARB is currently considering. They're actually having a hearing today, which is a proposed regulation to reduce oxides of nitrogen, which folks may know as NOx. It's a pollutant with significant air quality and public health impacts, and certainly transportation is a significant contributor to NOx pollution, and for heavy duty engines after model year 2024. They have some really interesting statistics about how this will impact California. It's about the equivalent of taking 16 million light duty cars off the road, significant public health benefits, as you can see on this slide, and yielding about 36 billion in health benefits. So again, they are having a hearing today on this regulation, so they have not decided whether or not they're going to adopt this or not. But both of these are things that Colorado is taking a look at, and that we would have the authority under the Clean Air Act to adopt based on California's action. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague Kay Kelly to talk a little bit about phase-in.
Thank you, Sophie. Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Excellent. So as Sophie's earlier slide showed, medium and heavy duty is by no means a homogeneous sector. The slide she showed had, about 30 different vehicles on the chart, and that's still really an oversimplification of what this market looks like. The engine manufacturers actually break the market into about 80 different market segments. So, we as the state recognize that it's unrealistic to expect that, 6 weight classes and 30 vehicle types and 80 market segments are going to develop on the same timeline. The other thing that we understand is that, these are not recreational vehicles. These are working vehicles that businesses across the state are depending on for their livelihoods, and that we, as consumers and citizens across the state are depending on to make sure that, milk is delivered to the grocery store and things that we need get to us. So certainly can't be addressed in any one-size-fits-all manner. And most industry experts are actually expecting the market to develop in waves. The timeline here is very general, and it is also changing all the time. As Sophie mentioned, we have seen the technology developing on the light duty side very quickly, and research doesn't happen always on an exact timeline. But the good news is that there are some sectors that are ready now. Things like transit buses. There are, several dozen models of electric and hydrogen transit buses on the market, plus also natural gas buses. And these buses aren't just running around in urban areas with flat terrain and moderate climates. There are some communities that are really putting these vehicles through their paces. Places like Zion National Park, places like Duluth, Minnesota, and they're having some really good results. So, things like that are ready more in the near term. And also, this second wave of delivery vehicles, there are about a dozen small delivery vehicles already on the market. So that's another thing that's more in the near term. Some of these other sectors are further out, but maybe at a point where we can start supporting some early research demonstrations. We can certainly be in a position to start preparing the infrastructure that they're going to need, so that we're not caught on our heels as a state when the vehicles are ready. Next slide. So what is ready now? The North American Council on Freight Efficiency has released a series of reports on this sector, and this chart is actually pretty helpful in kind of visualizing where things stand on a comparison between traditional diesel technology and electric technology. So this chart is really evaluating the level of readiness across almost 24 different considerations that fleets have. You know, how much does the vehicle weigh? How much do they cost? How far can they drive before I have to stop to refuel or recharge? You know, what are the maintenance considerations? What are the environmental considerations? What kind of infrastructure do I need? And again, these are business decisions that fleets are making, not impulse purchases. And fleets need to have all of these elements pencil out to be in a position to adopt the vehicles. So the blue is where the EVs have the advantage, and the red is where conventional diesel vehicles have the advantage. And the boxes show where the two technologies reach that cost and performance parity mark. So medium duty, this slide is just about medium duty, so class 3 through 6. And most of the applications in this area that are ready now are things that operate in urban areas, things that drive about the same number of miles every day. They return to base at night. They're able to fuel centrally, you know, at their garage location. And these are fleets that are things like transit buses, school buses, trash trucks, small delivery vehicles. So you see that they're starting to reach parity across a lot of these different factors. When you move to the heavy duty slide, this is that same chart, except this is class 7 and 8. You'll see that, you know, these are a little bit more far out on the horizon. These are things like freight trucks that carry really heavy loads. They likely haul them across long distances. And there are some challenges still in this sector. You know, the battery technology is not quite there to provide the kind of power they need to travel these long distances and carry these heavy loads. But there are some demonstration level things happening, but, you know, not really widespread commercial availability, and certainly not in any significant volumes yet. But, you know, the encouraging thing is that you can still see some of that blue sneaking into the chart in the 2025 to 2030 timeframe. And we do expect that even these sectors that are challenging now could reach that cost and performance parity with diesel by the middle of the next decade. And from here, I'm going to hand the podium over to Lauren McDonnell. She's the outreach planner for the climate unit at the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment, and she's going to cover the state climate equity framework. Lauren?
Thanks, Kay. Equity plays a major role in a lot of this work, and as Sophie mentioned earlier, certain communities will and already are experiencing greater impacts from climate change. And so the state is focusing on disproportionately impacted communities and their climate response. And these communities include people of color, low-income residents, tribal and indigenous peoples, and communities who are more vulnerable because of cumulative environmental impacts and environmental justice impacts. So to better serve these communities and help ensure the state's response to climate change supports and promotes racial equity and economic justice, the state is in the process of developing a climate equity framework. This framework will identify and better engage communities experiencing the greatest impacts and make sure that these policy measures are minimizing burdens to and increasing benefits for our most impacted communities. So within this context, for example, policy measures could be implemented in a way that elevates community voices in the stakeholder process and prioritizes improving air quality and quality of life in and around neighborhoods who are already experiencing disproportionate air quality impacts because of their proximity to freight lines and major highways. And with that, I will hand it over to, is Sophie doing the wrap up?
Sure. Yeah, and I'm actually going to see if Executive Directors Will Tour or Shoshana Liu want to say anything before we jump into public comment.
Sophie, are we off mute?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Getting used to this technology ourselves. You know, I would just want to sort of echo everything that's already been said. I mean, I think this was a really good overview of the kind of range of pieces that sort of fit into the puzzle we're looking at and the extent of different voices we want to have part of the conversation. And I think that, you know, just to echo what was said at the very beginning, this is not the only time to comment. This was sort of, you know, an invitation to get everybody who's joining today up to speed on, you know, where we've gotten to. But, you know, our hope is that people can reflect a little bit, both on what they came into this thinking and, as you digest it and have more feedback, we really, really, really want to hear from all of you. And our goal is for this to be a kind of conversation informed by a very broad array of Coloradans who have different equities on this topic. So, really appreciate everybody taking the time to join us today. And, look forward to a conversation that will be ongoing.
Thank you. Will, did you want to make any comments?
Yeah, so really just to echo Shoshana, and I think Sophie and Kay did a great job of laying out the issues that we're looking at. I think I would just add from Energy Office perspective, we've been helping to coordinate a multi-agency state effort to develop a greenhouse gas emissions roadmap for the state. And given that transportation is now the largest source of greenhouse gas emissions, and that heavy duty vehicles are both a major source of GHG emissions and have very significant impacts in terms of NOx and particulates, particularly in some of our most impacted communities, we just see this as a central strategy for achieving state greenhouse gas and air quality goals. So very much looking forward to the questions and conversation on this.
Great, thank you. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Mike King to moderate our public comment.
All right, can you hear me, Sophie?
Yes.
Okay, so thanks everyone for your participation today. As you know, in the registration, we offered the opportunity for folks to pre-register for public comment. And we also solicited any questions that people wanted to submit ahead of the meeting. So we're going to enter the public comment period now. We're going to limit that to 2 minutes per speaker to allow as many folks as possible to talk. We've prioritized the elected officials and pre-registered speakers first. Other folks that did not pre-register, you still have an opportunity if you use the control panel on the GoToWebinar that you should have on your screen. If you raise your hand, then we will find that and we'll put you in the queue, and hopefully we'll have time to get to that public comment. But as Sophie said, there will be other opportunities in the future meetings, as well as the email address that you see on the screen there. We will also answer some of those pre-submitted questions near the end of the meeting. And so our first comment, I'm going to read the next couple of folks so that people are ready. They know that they're on deck. And when it comes time for your comment, I will unmute you on my end, but you may also have to unmute yourself using your own control panel. And then if you're on a phone, you can hit *6 to do that. So our first commenter will be Greg Fulton from the Colorado Motor Carriers Association. Greg, I am unmuting you right now. So if you also unmute, you should be able to begin. Can you hear me, Greg? Can you speak?
Yes. Can you hear me, Michael?
Yes. Please go ahead, Greg.
Well, thank you.
Excuse me. Before you start, I apologize. Our next two folks will be Commissioner Don Stanton and Catherine Goff from the city of North Glen. So if you two could prepare yourselves, and Greg, you can please begin.
Thank you, Michael. Hey, thank you very much for providing us the opportunity to speak today. Colorado Motor Carrier Association represents about 650 companies that are directly involved or affiliated with trucking in the state. We are committed to improving air quality and reducing our emissions, as well as actually making a substantial reduction in cutting actually our greenhouse gas emissions. We have a long history of doing this. I mean, we have been a SmartWay partner since its inception, which is about 15 years ago. We have been recognized by EPA on a number of occasions by them. We helped draft the 2014 Clean Truck Act, which provided a lot of the incentives. And we have a number of carriers in that are in the EPA SmartWay program and adopted various strategies. I do want to end up commending that the state has looked at a multifaceted approach on this. You know, there is no silver bullet on this. It's going to take various approaches. The question that I think when we look at this, we also recognize it's important that we end up reducing emissions in those communities that are most affected. And I think the strategy that's being laid out here does a lot of that as well. The point that's, I think, important to recognize is that we have an 80-20 problem, as we say, in terms of on the truck issue, in terms of emissions. We have 20% of the trucks generating, on-road trucks generating 80% of the emissions. And what those trucks are 2010 and older trucks. In many cases, you will have something like a 2002 or older truck that would be emitting 60 times as great as a new truck is today. So our focus needs to be in a lot of cases in those areas. And that's why the very first point and related at turning over those older vehicles is a critical one in our eyes.
Greg, I apologize, but your 2 minutes are up. Could you wrap up in just a few seconds, please?
I will do that. Thanks a lot, Michael. I will just note that we realize it takes we're going to have different strategies will work more effectively, a range of different strategies for each different sector in this industry. So I would just end up encouraging us to be open to a range of ideas. We're excited about the opportunities to actually be part of this and do our part to actually improve air quality in the state. Thank you again.
Thank you very much, Greg. Our next comment is from Transportation Commissioner Don Stanton. Don, if you unmute yourself, you should be able to start. And after Don, we have Catherine Goff and George Marlin up next. Thank you, Don.
Thank you for this opportunity. I'm Don Stanton. I represent Jefferson County, but we 11 transportation commissioners are very interested in statewide problems and we're working together. And this, I think, is a wonderful opportunity to hear from the public and to get the public policy right. And I'd like to second what Greg said. This is a real chance to find out the things that we can do as individuals, to listen to industry, to listen to different segments of society and different size truck operators. I think the idea of getting the maintenance and thinking ahead, as Sophie and her colleagues said, is really important. Thank you.
Thank you, Don. Our next commenter is Catherine Goff from the city of North Glen. I am not seeing Catherine's name right now. So Catherine, if you are here, please put it in the chat so I know who to unmute. And while we do that, we'll move on to Commissioner George Marlin of Clear Creek County. If George is here, I have unmuted you. So if you unmute yourself, you can begin. And after George, we have Erica Sparhawk and Ron Allen Goako up next. George, can you please go?
Yes, hi, and thank you for taking some time to hear from voices around the state on this important issue. My name is George Marlin. I'm a county commissioner from Clear Creek County and the vice president of Colorado Communities for Climate Action. CC4CA is a coalition of 34 local governments working to strengthen statewide climate policy. The state is making good progress on electrifying parts of its transportation system. And as was pointed out in this presentation, not because it's a simple process, heavy and medium duty trucks remain a major gap. So I want to encourage you to focus on that. Local governments, of course, are on the front lines of climate change and its impacts. Wildfires being a major and poignant example right now. And so, of course, electrifying the freight system is a major component of any effective strategy to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and meet the goals set in Senate Bill 181. I got the Senate Bill number wrong. So thank you for engaging local governments and for taking these issues seriously. And we look forward to working with you as you nail down and implement an effective clean trucking strategy.
Thank you, Commissioner. Next up, we have Erica Sparhawk. Let me unmute you, Erica. You should be good to go now if you unmute yourself.
Okay. My name is Erica Sparhawk, and I'm a town trustee for the town of Carbondale. I was born and raised here in Garfield County, and I also serve as the president of Colorado Communities for Climate Action, along with George Marlin, who just testified. He gave a quick overview, but we are a coalition of 34 local governments around the state, and I want to emphasize that half are on the western slope and about 2/3 are rural. So we are truly representing a wide sector of communities in the state. And achieving the emission reduction targets set into law by House Bill 1261 is really going to take an all hands on deck. And I really appreciate and want to emphasize to the state agency representatives that it is going to take all of our state agencies working together to achieve these goals. So I appreciate that you are taking that step right now, and I know you are in many other ways. Just like one of the other prior speakers said, there is no silver bullet, and everybody loves to say that. But we really have to tackle climate change, engage in strategies across all sectors, and including heavily transportation. So I really appreciate you guys tackling this and putting forward a really public engagement on these heavy duty vehicle components. All of our members in CC4CA take these issues very seriously. That's why we're members of Colorado Communities for Climate Action. And there's nothing like being right here in the valley and in the county dealing with 2 major wildfires to really put the emphasis on why we need to take action now. All of these, impacts of climate change have a huge impact on our state infrastructure, including our roads, bridges, whether that's flooding, whether that is the fires like we had in Glenwood Canyon. So making wise investments now will hopefully provide us these savings of dealing with these impacts in the future. I just want to emphasize that as local governments, we do stand ready to partner with all of you and to move forward with making the case studies or in implementing the vehicles that we can. So reach out and keep us connected with your efforts.
Thank you, Erica. Your time has expired. Appreciate the comment. Next up, our next commenter will be Ron Allen Goaco from Pueblo County. After Ron, we will have Matt Scher and Randall Wheelock. So Ron, I've unmuted you. You can go ahead and speak.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
I can, yes.
Thank you. So one of the things that I appreciate is this program that you're coming up, the truck electrification of trucks. And I was hoping actually that this time, in case there would be developments of programs or policies, like what I've seen in the Charterhead, Colorado, the incentives for the premium on electric vehicles are actually for Denver metropolitan area only. So we're hoping that in the future, if there would be programs and policies, that other jurisdictions, including Pueblo County, would also be included in those incentives, like perhaps maybe trading old and inefficient pickup trucks with an electric truck. That's just an example, but the essence of my comment is that I hope the whole state of Colorado would benefit from those incentives if there will be. Another point that I would like to say is that we're actually doing an EV readiness plan, and we're also trying to understand the traffic dynamics patterns, including those trucks that pass through Pueblo interstate highways from Denver all the way to maybe southern like Texas or New Mexico. And we would appreciate if there's anybody who would be able to provide us those information or data for traffic patterns as far as trucks is concerned. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron. Appreciate your comment. Our next speaker will be Commissioner Matt Scher from Eagle County. Matt, I have unmuted you. I think you should be able to speak now.
Thank you. Yeah, I am Matt Scher, Commissioner from Eagle County, where we and other local partners have adopted a climate action plan, which includes 25% greenhouse gas reduction by 2025 and 80% by 2050. These commitments prioritize reducing carbon pollution from our transportation sector, which, like the state, has now become our largest greenhouse gas contributor. Targeting medium and heavy duty vehicles, which typically cover more miles than personal vehicles, strategically improves efficiency and emissions, as you can replace a fewer number of vehicles and get a much larger impact on emissions. Eagle County's eco-transit fleet consists of 38 buses, and we'll be adding 3 electric buses into the fleet this year. Reducing upfront cost of these vehicles is critical to getting more ZEV buses and trucks on the road. Early market incentives will help to bring the cost down as more large vehicles and manufacturers are able to thrive in the market. The issue paper provided suggests that additional investment in vehicle maintenance will be necessary, but we believe that while training and maintenance equipment will be necessary, one of the significant benefits ZEV vehicles provide is reduced maintenance cost. Take truck brakes, for example. In the East Vale community at the bottom of Vale Pass, residents are familiar with what we call the East Vale aroma, which consists of tiny particles of burnt brake pads floating in the air. Of course, this is not good for us or our kids to breathe. In addition, Jake brakes create noise and pollution and impact quality of life and property values, not to mention the safety impacts when brakes overheat and fail. But electric trucks have regenerative braking, requiring a fraction of maintenance of repair. Also, the transmissions can downshift to absorb unwanted momentum similar to Jake brakes, but silently and with improved modulation. Eagle County has installed 16 EV chargers in the past 3 years, including 5 level 3 DC fast chargers. We know that expanding high-speed, high-capacity charging infrastructure will be necessary to support the conversion to ZEV medium and heavy-duty vehicles. So we support the adoption of advanced clean truck standards for medium and heavy-duty trucks. Such standards can help drive innovation and market-based solutions to reduce emissions from our freight and overall transportation sector. And I'll conclude by thanking you for the time and this opportunity.
Thank you, Commissioner. Our next commenter, I'll list 3 so folks know who's coming up. Next, we have Randall Wheelock from Clear Creek County. After that will be Catherine Goff, who we missed earlier. And then after that is Mayor Hunter Mortensen from the town of Frisco. So let me unmute Randall. Randall, you should be unmuted.
I am, and I'll begin by thanking you for this opportunity. Thanks. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay, thanks. I'm the chair of the Clear Creek County Commission, serve along with George, who spoke a little bit ago. Also on the board of CC4CA, Colorado Communities for Climate Action, and the co-chair of the collaborative effort and the vice chair of the I-70 Coalition, both of which are concerned with transportation in the I-70 corridor. Clear Creek County encompasses the communities from Floyd Hill to the Eisenhower-Johnson Tunnel, basically from Floyd Hill to the Divide, Idaho Springs Empire, Georgetown, Silver Plume, and other residential concentrations, all of which are immediately adjacent to I-70. We suffer the impacts of every pound of emissions and decibel and every bit of dirt and rock that becomes particulate matter. And when accidents, weather, and heavy traffic create congestion, that inefficiency has an enormous impact on our livelihoods, family time, ambulance, fire, law enforcement response times, and our air, water, and noise pollution levels. And the massive slow climb to the Divide emits huge amounts of carbon. We see the impacts of that carbon in our economy, our quality of life, and our environmental health, specifically now in Clear Creek County, with the first air quality monitors, which were installed in the last 2 years, indicating extremely high levels of ozone. And in response, CDOT's now begun to upgrade those monitors to confirm those levels and understand their implications for other pollutants like carbon. The fire risk we see today so dramatically in the news is throughout the quarter, and 22 of the last 23 the largest 23 fires in recorded Colorado history occurred since 2001. The U.S. Forest Service is now extremely concerned about the potential for catastrophic fire in the corridor to paralyze mobility because of the fire in those forests. Our snowpack, which is important to the cities below, melts earlier each year, confirmed by the USGS and other studies now for many years. We're losing about a half a day of that time release water storage with every year that passes, in effect losing a winter reservoir for summer use for our communities and Denver. But we know how valuable the trucking industry is to Colorado and the nation, as it supplies virtually all of the goods up our corridor to supply the largest region of Colorado tourism, which is the second largest sector of Colorado's economy. In Colorado, we've made a good start with the AQCC's adoption of low emission vehicle and zero emission vehicle standards. And we believe the advanced clean trucking standards are similarly important, as well as expanded investment in EV infrastructure and good coordination between the state, the trucking industry, local governments, and other partners. Please understand, this is not a nice to have for local communities like ours. It's critical to our economic sustainability and our environmental sustainability moving forward into the future, both locally and globally. And we look forward to working with you to work out the details as you go forward with this effort and other listening sessions and develop what the right plan really is. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner. Appreciate that comment. Our next up is Catherine Goff from the city of North Glen. And Catherine, I believe that you should be unmuted right now.
I believe I am as well. Can you hear me?
Yes, please go ahead.
Thank you. I'm speaking as a member of the North Glen City Council and the Colorado Communities for Climate Action. For those of you who don't know, CC4CA is a coalition of 34 counties and municipalities around Colorado that are focused on strengthening statewide climate policy. I am encouraged that CDOT is moving forward with strategies to reduce carbon pollution in the transportation sector. I want to acknowledge the important progress that Colorado has already made. In just the past couple of years, the state adopted LEV and ZEV standards, increased funding of EV infrastructure, and is leading a coordinated statewide electrification strategy. Achieving emissions reductions across the entire transportation sector will require a comprehensive approach, and it is now time to take on the same sort of ambitious coordinated strategy for medium and heavy-duty trucks that the state is taking for light-duty vehicles. Some of the strategies that North Glen and the CC4CA are urging you to support include regional greenhouse gas budgets that ratchet down over time, increased funding for expanded charging infrastructure, the adoption of advanced clean trucking standards, last mile emissions reduction strategies, and new demand management programs. CC4CA and local governments like North Glen have a role to play in all of these strategies. The largest source of greenhouse gas in North Glen comes from transportation, and I-25 runs through our city. We could see a huge drop in transportation emissions and improve the health of our residents by CDOT acting now to adopt the advanced clean trucking standards. We at CC4CA in North Glen are ready and eager to partner with CDOT, the Colorado Energy Office, and other state agencies in pursuing these strategies. We need to act expeditiously. The climate crisis is real. Thank you.
Thank you for that comment. Our next set of commenters, we will have Mayor Hunter Mortensen from the town of Frisco. After him will be Michael Wurtzel from Summit County. And then after that will be Jacob Smith. So please be prepared for that. Let me unmute Mayor Mortensen. Hunter, I have unmuted you. It looks like you can unmute yourself and begin.
Yep, I am unmuted. Thank you very much, everyone, for having this presentation and inviting us all today. Again, Mayor Hunter Mortensen from the town of Frisco. We are also a proud CC4CA jurisdiction. I do not need to repeat some of the things that we've heard from our board members of CC4CA. Our town is in complete support of meeting aggressive goals in emissions reductions, and really excited to be a part of these conversations moving forward. Just like to add, we hope to see and help work with CDOT and the other state agencies to implement infrastructure for small towns like ours who are at the choke points when Interstate 70 is closed, so we don't have these vehicles marooned in our towns without any way to service them or fuel them or get them back on the road. And that infrastructure build out across our state is key and crucial to making this a successful plan, and we look forward to being a part of it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor Mortensen. Our next commenter is Michael Wurtzel. After that, we'll have Jacob Smith, and then Becky English will follow after Jacob. So let me look for Michael. Michael, you've been unmuted. You can proceed.
Hi, everyone. Summit County is not only a member of CC4CA like many others on this call, but also our community, including the towns of Breckenridge, Frisco, Dillon, and Silverthorne, have a climate action plan that calls for lowering emissions from transportation 25% by 2030. And reducing emissions from medium and heavy duty vehicles is going to be absolutely critical in meeting this component for our community to meet its own climate action goals. Like electricity, transportation has a huge impact on statewide greenhouse gas emissions, but through deliberately constructed policies, strategies, and market trends, new estimates show that emissions from electricity have dropped over 20% since 2015. This underscores the importance of ambitious and well-designed strategies for reducing carbon pollution associated with the medium and heavy-duty vehicles we're talking about today. Summit County has started this transition itself with the purchase of its first 2 electric buses for its public transit system, the Summit Stage. As a major thoroughfare for interstate traffic, Summit County applauds CDOT, the Colorado Energy Office, and other state partners in working to meet Colorado's ambitious carbon pollution goals. Local governments can be a valuable partner in these efforts, and we're looking forward to working with you in this continued collaborative effort.
Thank you, Mr. Wurtzel. Appreciate your comment. Next up, we have Jacob Smith. And Jacob, I believe you should be unmuted now. You have to unmute yourself to speak. I'm not hearing you, Jacob. Up there, looks like you're, yes, looks like you're good now. Please proceed.
Great, thank you. I did not realize we would have quite so many elected officials with CC4CA jurisdictions on today. So I will just say, my name is Jacob Smith. I'm the executive director of CC4CA, former mayor of Golden, and I will thank you all for your hard work on this and echo all of the things you've heard from other elected officials associated with our jurisdictional members. Thank you.
Thank you, Jacob. Next up on our list is Becky English. However, I do not see her name on the list. So Becky, if you are here, if you could enter in the chat or find another way, maybe raise your hand to let us know that you'd still like to comment, and we'll come back to you. In the meantime, our next up will be Patricia Portillo, and after that, Terry Mannies, and then following that, Shayna Oliver. So let me look for Patricio. Okay, Patricio. So I have unmuted you, and it looks like you should be good to go. Patricio, I'm not hearing you. You might have to hit *6 to unmute yourself if you're on a phone. My screen indicates that you are self-muted. Try hitting *6 again, and we'll see if we can get this.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, please proceed, Patricio. Apologies for that.
Great, thank you. So hi, this is Patricia Portillo. I'm a transportation analyst with the Natural Resources Defense Council. First I'd like to just thank Colorado for joining this historic multi-state Memorandum of Understanding to advance the electric truck and bus market that came out a few months ago. And I also greatly appreciate this proactive stakeholder engagement to really dig into what a Colorado clean truck strategy can look like. Transitioning the medium and heavy duty vehicles away from fossil fuels to zero emission technology is crucial for the health and economic well-being of Colorado. And that's because these medium and heavy duty vehicles are largely diesel burning, which, that leads to a lot of toxic pollution like NOx, which contributes to smog and particulate matter. And the respiratory and cardiovascular diseases that these diesel emissions produce cost our state millions, if not billions, in premature deaths, higher rates of cancer, heart attacks, asthma, hospital visits, and ER trips. The health impacts are severe, and the communities that tend to suffer the most are the ones that live adjacent to freight hubs. And these communities are predominantly communities of color and low-income communities. To begin that transition away from fossil fuels in our medium and heavy-duty vehicles to zero-emission technology, we'd strongly urge the state to adopt California's Advanced Clean Truck Rule, really as a foundational policy for medium and heavy-duty vehicle electrification. The Advanced Clean Truck Rule would ensure zero-emission medium and heavy-duty vehicles are available for sale in Colorado and send a clear market signal. In order to do that properly, to adopt California's Advanced Clean Truck Rule properly, there are sort of 4 principles that we would urge the state to adhere to. The first is to adopt the rule as quickly as possible to avoid missing compliance model years in coordination with other Section 177 states. We would also encourage the state to maximize local air quality and pollution reduction benefits. So that means, providing credits for early action, but only for the vehicles that are actually sold within Colorado. The third is to, right-size this fleet reporting requirement that exists within the Advanced Clean Truck Rule to really provide the granularity of data that is needed in order to electrify some of these harder to electrify market segments within the truck fleet. And then also to pursue complementary policies. So looking at California's heavy duty omnibus rule, which will reduce emissions from diesel vehicles that will continue to be sold, as well as building out the requisite charging infrastructure and getting the commercial and industrial rates set correctly. So
Patricia,
that's all I have. Thank you for the time.
Thank you. Sorry to interrupt. Yes, your time is up. Appreciate your comments. Next up, we have Terry Mannies. And after Terry, I see Shayna Oliver. I don't see a Shayna Oliver on the list of participants, but I do see a Shannon Oliver. So Shannon, if that's you, please raise your hand so we can come to you next. And then after that will be Walter Sharp. So let me unmute Terry. Terry, you should be ready to go.
Hi, thank you so much for giving me an opportunity to speak, and thank you to all of the government partners and community partners in Colorado for this really important work that you're doing. We appreciate I am a representative of Orange EV. We manufacture all electric terminal tractors, and I wanted to thank you for acknowledging the role that terminal tractors can play in reducing reducing harmful emissions, as evidenced by the fact that we are allowed to participate in the alt fuels program. And we really appreciate that and your historic support for our small industry, but important industry. We are particularly interested in the grand scheme that you are developing because we know that our terminal tractors, well, let me rephrase, we know that diesel powered terminal tractors and any terminal tractor typically operates in a freight hub or distribution center that is most often located in a disproportionately impacted community. And so we're particularly pleased to see that that is something of interest to you and lowering emissions in those areas. So again, I just wanted to thank you for acknowledging the role our technology plays in improving air quality, and urge you as you go forward to continue providing incentives for terminal tractors as you design a comprehensive strategy. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Terry, for that comment. And next up we have, as I said, we have someone registered under the name Shayna Oliver, and I see Shannon Oliver on the call. Shannon, if that is you, you can unmute and speak now. And if not, okay, I don't see Shannon unmuting. So let me move on to our next speaker, which will be Walter Sharp. Walter, I have unmuted you, and it appears you're on a phone, so you may have to press *6 to unmute yourself, but go ahead whenever you're ready. I see you as self-muted, Walter. Can you press *6? Try now.
Thank you, Michael.
Yes.
Walter Sharp here. I own and operate Sharper Energy Technologies. We're a designer and builder of floating photovoltaics. So we have power and water co-located, and we're in the process of designing and building hydrogen generation, storage, and fueling facilities at these same locations. And so we're actively seeking transit agencies, since the buses are the ones that are currently fuel cell, to be able to run some pilots with us. My comment is around, I know a lot of talk is about existing fleets and trading in existing vehicles that are 2009 or older. And I'd like to suggest that perhaps there be something in the policy that allows us newbies in the industry, as we build our fleets, to be able to get some assistance, whether they be battery electric or fuel cell electric vehicles, so that we can help and not hinder the pollution being caused. Because I understand that you have to own and operate the vehicles, the diesel vehicles, for at least 2 years in Colorado to qualify. That's the major topics that I have. I appreciate all that everybody is doing and look forward to being an active participant in the continuing conversation and collaboration.
Thank you, Walter, for that comment. Our next group of commenters, the next three up, and I apologize, I didn't give you as much warning. First, we have Susan Nadell. After Susan will be Travis Madsen, and after Travis will be Ian Thompson. So Susan, I have unmuted you. If you're ready, please proceed.
Hi there, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to comment today. My name is Susan Nadell, and I'm the Mountain West Advocate for Environmental Entrepreneurs. For those who don't know, E2 is a national nonpartisan group of business leaders who advocate for policy that is good for the economy and good for the environment. I'm speaking on behalf of E2 members in Colorado. We would like to express our support for Colorado joining the historic MultiState MOU to advance the electric truck and bus market. We also strongly urge the state to adopt California's Advanced Clean Truck Rule as a foundational policy for medium and heavy duty vehicle electrification. The ACT rule would benefit all residents by reducing emissions, improving air quality, ensuring zero emission medium and heavy duty vehicles are available for sale in Colorado, and also creating economic opportunities for further investment and job creation in the state. We know from the Clean Cars rules that investment dollars flow in states that have adopted these rules. E2 supports policies that advance the clean energy economy, and at the end of 2019, there were nearly 62,420 full-time clean jobs in Colorado, adding over 2,700 jobs from the previous years. And these jobs grew twice as fast, about 4.8%, as the statewide employment, 2.4%. 3,200 of these jobs were in clean vehicles, the majority in hybrids, plug-in hybrids, and full battery electric vehicles. Colorado has lost almost 6,000 jobs in 2020, clean jobs, through July due to the pandemic, which is about an 8.9% reduction, more than double the clean jobs gained in 2019. We support the guidelines for adopting the ACT rule to maximize its equity, public health, environmental, and economic benefits that were laid out by Patricia Portillo from NRDC. And he wanted me to let you know he will be submitting a comment letter that includes more details on these principles.
Thank you, Susan. I
thank
apologize
you very much.
that your time is up.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you very much for that comment. Next up, we have Travis Madsen from SWEEP. After Travis will be Ian Thomas from Colorado Mesa University, and then Diego Lopez is after that. So let me unmute you, Travis. Yeah, you should be good to go, Travis.
Great. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Travis Madsen. I direct the transportation program at the Southwest Energy Efficiency Project. We're a nonprofit organization working in the 6-state Southwest region to improve the efficiency of our economy. Thanks to the state of Colorado and to Governor Polis for signing the MOU on a clean truck strategy and moving forward with this process. We greatly appreciate it. I just want to briefly note that SWEEP also supports the 4 principles that Patricia Portillo from NRDC listed earlier, which are to adopt the Advanced Clean Truck Rule as quickly as possible in coordination with allied states, to maximize the local air quality and pollution reduction benefits that rule can bring by prioritizing the deployment of clean trucks in Colorado, to right-size the fleet reporting requirement, which will provide valuable information on trucking operations in Colorado, but we'll need to lower the threshold for reporting to make sure that it fits with Colorado's smaller trucking fleet. And then to pursue complementary policies. There's a lot of complementary policies that Colorado should look into, but in particular, I want to urge the state to adopt a policy that will generate revenue that the state can then invest into clean truck deployment and clean fuel infrastructure. This will help unlock benefits and accelerate the progress that Colorado can achieve. So, for example, a clean fuel standard or a fee that would be levied on combustion fuel sales, with the revenues then reinvested into vehicle deployment and infrastructure expansion is an essential tool that Colorado needs to move faster towards a cleaner and more efficient transportation system. I look forward to working with all of you over the coming months and year to make progress in this area. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Travis, for your comment. Next up, we have Ian Thomas, although I don't see Ian on the list here. So after Ian will be Diego Lopez. Diego, I've just unmuted you, but before you go, let me just say that after Diego, we will have Lisa Alley, then Matt Teskey, and then Kimberly Redden. So Diego, if you're ready, please proceed.
Excellent. Yeah, thank you so much. My name is Diego Lopez. I'm the Executive Director of Northern Colorado Clean Cities. We're a part of the Department of Energy's nationwide Clean Cities program. So there's over 90 coalitions in the United States. There's 3 really great coalitions in Colorado. We're all here to promote sustainable transportation through the use of alternative fuels. And really, we just want to echo what a lot of people have been saying here, Sweep and everybody here, in that this is going to be helpful for the sustainability and resiliency of Colorado, but that as we are designing these rules and laws, I'm so glad that equity was placed as a high priority. Because I do think that other dimensions of equity, in particular rural versus urban development, should be looked at as well. So we're excited to work with all of you to promote alternative fuels and transportation in the region. And we thank you for the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Diego, for that comment. Next on our list, we have Lisa Alley. And then after Lisa will be Matt Teskey, Kimberly Redden, and then Brian DeBruyne. So Lisa, let me unmute you. And yes, you should be good to go, Lisa.
Hi, thanks so much for this opportunity to speak to you all. I'm a certified nurse midwife and kind of have a little bit of an investment in future generations through my work. I'm very excited that this is happening, and I just wanted to throw something out that may be too soon in the process, but I'm wondering if trains are being looked at, particularly trains that run on renewables like wind and solar, that container trucks could, containers could be put on those trains, and then smaller vehicles could meet the trains at different depots and then take them to smaller towns. The other benefit that I see in doing this is that it would also provide transportation for people and therefore decrease car miles that are traveled by people trying to get around the state. And that's all I wanted to say. Thank you so much.
Thank you for that comment, Lisa. Next up, we have Matt Teskey. I don't know if I see Matt's name on here. It may be under a different name. Matt, if you are on the line, please raise your virtual hand or let us know some other way that you're still around to make your comment. Otherwise, I will move next to Kimberly Redden. And Kimberly, I see you, and it says that your audio is off. So I don't know if you can turn that on, but if you're ready to speak, we will take your comment now. After Kimberly, we have Brian DeBruyne, then Sherry Merrow, and then Rick Ash. Okay, Kimberly, I'm still not seeing anything from Kimberly. Let me go to Brian. I'm also not seeing Brian at the moment. So our next up would be Sherry Merrow. Let me find Sherry. Okay, Sherry, I've unmuted you and it looks like you're ready to speak. Are you there, Sherry? I'm not hearing anything, Sherry, but your mic is green, so it looks like you're trying to say something. All right, let's move on and we'll give Sherry an opportunity later. Why don't we go to Rick Ash? And Rick, let me find you. Rick, I've unmuted you. Can you unmute yourself on your end?
How about that? Can you hear me?
There you go, Rick. Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. My name is Rick Ash. I'm a retired truck driver, owner-operator. I've worked with my friend Greg Fulton at Colorado Motor Carrier Association on quite a few things. I'm also currently working with CDOT on a couple other projects you have going on, specifically safe mountain corridor driving and truck parking solutions. I just have a comment. At some point, I realized that I was part of the Class 8 part of the industry, which on your previous slides you showed is the farthest out in the timeline on vehicles that are going to be able to adopt to this technology. I fully support everything that this project is trying to accomplish, but at some point in your process, you're going to get to a point where you want to start regulating. And my comment has to do with that in that better than 90% of the trucking companies in this country are fleets that have 5 vehicles or less. So any type of regulation that is considered or adopted is going to have a much bigger financial impact on those small fleet owners like I was when I was in business. So I would just ask that you keep that in mind when you get to the regulatory stage of your project. And just an editorial comment on my own, just because California is doing something doesn't mean it's the right thing to do, although it may be in this situation. There's a lot of folks in Colorado who are very concerned about Colorado becoming another California, and I don't have enough time to tell you all the reasons why. But thank you very much for what you're doing and the opportunity to speak to you.
Thank you, Rick. We appreciate that comment. I believe, let me just check my list here. It looks like the last person on our list for public comment currently is Thad Karowski. Thad, let me unmute you, and it looks like you are self-muted at the moment. Can you unmute yourself? There you go. I think you should be able to speak.
Can you hear me?
Yep, go ahead.
Great, thanks. Appreciate it. My name is Thad Karowski. I'm a senior policy manager with Tesla. Many of you know me. I'm here in Colorado. And I want to thank you, first of all, and the state for kind of the swift action that you've been taking on the medium and heavy duty sectors. As a climate advocate as well, there have been a number of references to GHG reduction commitments that have been made today from the state, from the local communities. And to note one additional, there are 60 countries in the world through the Paris Climate Accord that have committed to net zero by 2050. And we simply cannot get to that type of attainment without addressing transportation fuels across all sectors. So in any case, so Tesla's a manufacturer of a Class 8 semi. That's been delayed a couple of years, but it's expected to be released beginning next year. We also have a number of other competitors with various go-to-market strategies, those all coming in the next couple of years. I say this to make a point that the waved approach noted in the slide deck, particularly related to the regional and long-haul trucking sectors that are looked at in the later waves, are really coming quickly. And obviously the state needs to weigh opportunities for GHG emission reductions based upon kind of that wave opportunity and what that GHG reduction is and how meaningful that may be. But my point being that technology deployment is really moving quickly, and we urge the state, as you have been, to continue accelerating planning, frequent meetings, and early action as you have been. Tesla has been involved directly in the development of the ACT rules in California. We are supportive of those rules and the recent adoption. We support Colorado's rapid adoption for really because of the required regulatory delays that push compliance years out further based on those. And so we urge you to act on those. The NOx rule I'll hold comment on, as that's going on. Those discussions are going on right now. And
I'm afraid that your time is up, your 2 minutes, but please feel free to add other comments via the email address and we'll have future meetings, and you'll be welcome to comment there as well. Thank you.
Great.
So that is the end of our current list. We have some folks that we missed that I want to return to. I know that it appears that Sherry Merrow might be ready to make her comment. So Sherry, I will unmute you, and if you are able to speak now, please proceed.
Can you hear me now, Mike?
Yes, I can. Sorry about that, Sherry. Please go ahead.
Okay, sorry for the technical difficulties. My name is Sherry Merrow, and I am the chair of the Colorado NGV Natural Gas Vehicle Coalition and the director of state affairs for Natural Gas Vehicles for America. NGV America is the national trade association for the natural gas vehicle industry, and we appreciate the opportunity to comment on the Colorado Clean Trucking Strategy. Since tailpipe emissions in the Colorado transportation sector continue to be problematic, it is imperative that all appropriate available measures be taken now to lower these emissions. Near zero, low NOx engines utilizing renewable natural gas are available today for every medium and heavy duty application, and their increased deployment will immediately reduce emissions. These vehicles are potentially carbon neutral and even carbon negative, depending on the RNG source, and using waste to produce RNG helps to solve waste and methane emissions problems while helping life cycle and tailpipe emissions reductions. In the multi-state MOU that's been mentioned, the language clearly recognizes the need for low NOx, near zero, medium and heavy duty vehicles to be used now by saying, whereas electrification of the transportation sector is essential to achieve the greenhouse gas emission reductions needed to avoid the worst effects of climate change, and in conjunction with the introduction of low NOx heavy duty trucks to reduce harmful emissions of NOx, particulate matter, and toxic air contaminants that adversely impact public health. So this is acknowledged in the MOU that Colorado has joined, and I would really encourage the state to look at the RNG NGVs that are available today that will not need to wait 10 years to be available in heavy duty trucking, but you can use them today. And I look forward to working with the team on this strategy and finding a way to move forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sherry, for your comment. One other person that we missed previously, and I see they have their hand up now, is Kimberly Redden. So Kimberly, I have unmuted you. Can you go ahead and unmute yourself?
Hi, Michael. Thank you.
Yes, please go ahead.
Appreciate the opportunity to be part of this group today and the opportunity to speak as well. My name is Kim Redden. I work for the Colorado Corn Administrative Committee and the Colorado Corn Growers Association. I represent the growers and the grain handlers in the state of Colorado. It may seem a little unusual to be a part of this call, but I think when I explain our interest in clean air, I think it will become very clear. Grain corn, unlike sweet corn, makes up 99% of the corn grown in the United States, and a fair share of it is used for livestock food, and the rest of it is used for ethanol production in the state of Colorado. We are fortunate that in the state we have 3 commercial ethanol producers who produce clean, renewable energy that is already in the infrastructure currently in place. And we would like to also be a part of this conversation and part of the solution, just like natural gas. We have options and availability to clean our air now that doesn't require a lot of additional infrastructure, which would be required in some of these other cases. So we're similar to natural gas in that we believe that we have some solutions that are available more immediately that are just not well known or circulated within the population. So looking forward to being part of the solution and helping us to continue to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions, as we've done with adding just 10% ethanol to our gas supply. In the last few years, we have recorded 54 million metric ton reduction of greenhouse gas across the country, which is an equivalent of removing 11 million cars from our roads every year. So this is a little bit more in the car transportation section, but we do also have the opportunity to do so in the trucking industry as well. And just are excited to be a part of the conversation and hope to be a valuable part of getting our clean air in line in Colorado.
Thank you very much, Kim, for that comment. So I'll do a last call for the folks that we missed earlier. Becky English, Shayna Oliver, Ian Thomas, Matt Teskey, or Brian DeBruyne. And I see that there may be a hand raised by Elizabeth Fritham. So I will unmute you, Elizabeth, and you can go ahead and make your comment.
Yes, good afternoon. Can you hear me okay?
I can, yes.
Perfect, thank you. Yes, this is Elizabeth Fredheim. I'm with Nikola Motor Company. Appreciate the picture you put on the slide here for us. For those who aren't aware of Nikola, we are a zero-emission vehicle manufacturer focused mostly in the heavy-duty Class 8 space. We have both battery electric as well as hydrogen fuel cell electric vehicles. We really applaud the efforts that you all are making, and these early stakeholder engagements are so important, and it's been great to listen to the broad support for this effort, because it really leads to the coordination and the collaboration that we think is critical in these efforts as we move forward. As you know, vehicles don't sit still and they move across borders and towns, and so the better we have a coordinated effort to ensure that we can effectively launch these vehicles in the various markets and ensure that they're supported across their territories is extremely important. We're excited about the climate and health benefits of the technology, but we do also believe this is better technology. You know, there's fewer parts, fewer moving parts, so we anticipate less maintenance, better uptime, better reliability, better durability. So this is really moving as well to just a better technology. We highly encourage, as you're looking at various programs, to look at the three-legged stool of infrastructure, vehicles, and fuel. And I use fuel in the broadest sense of, you know, hydrogen and electricity. Often the fuel is missed in some of the program pieces, but obviously it's key to everything. And again, we just look forward to participating in the effort and collaborating with everyone.
Okay, thank you, Elizabeth, for that comment. I do not see any more raised hands at the moment, so at this time we will transition to answering some of the pre-submitted questions that people input when they were registering. And if the panelists would like to turn on their video, they're welcome to do that. We're going to direct the first question to Executive Director Will Torr. And the question is, how is the state moving forward with the implementation of HB 1261?
Thank you. So House Bill 1261 is the legislation that set climate targets for the state. It set the target of reducing economy-wide greenhouse gas emissions 26% below 2005 levels by 2025, 50% by 2030, and 90% by 2050. It also gave a broad grant of authority to the State Air Quality Commission to take action to make progress towards those targets, and also allowed them to, taking that action, to consider other voluntary measures that were being taken by the private sector and local governments, as well as other agencies. So the Energy Office has been leading a multi-agency effort to develop a greenhouse gas emissions roadmap that would map out strategies for meeting those targets, you know, looking out to 2050, but primarily focusing on the near-term action items that can achieve the 2025 and 2030 targets. There's also, as part of this, an active discussion happening at the State Air Quality Control Commission, looking at those near-term measures. And where we're at in the process right now is, you know, after many months of technical analysis and a large number of both individual stakeholder meetings and opportunities for public comment, there's an evaluation of those potential near-term strategies. We anticipate that by September 30th, there will be a public review draft of the GHG roadmap available for comment, and then the months of October will be available for additional public review before it is finalized. In that process, it has become clear that electricity, transportation, oil and gas, and buildings are likely the areas that need significant emissions reductions between now and 2030 to achieve those targets.
Thank you, Will, for that. Our next question is directed at Clay Clark, and this question is related to if there is a CARB-like or a CARB-style sales mandate in Colorado at some future point, what approach would be used to create a purchase mandate and develop the necessary charging infrastructure to support that?
Thanks, Mike. It's a great question. And as Sophie pointed out in her presentation, we're certainly analyzing whether the CARB or the California Advanced Clean Truck Standards make sense in Colorado, but there's certainly been no decision made on that front. I think, as the question points out or acknowledges, there's certainly only so much we can do, though, on the regulatory side. And so beyond the regulatory approach that we take, there really need to be those additional complementary policies put in place to make sure that we can best make this transition to clean trucks, and that it typically has been, rebates or just laying out the infrastructure to support those trucks. But I think it's important to understand that, there really is various regulatory approaches that the state can take. And we need to make sure that the regulatory approaches and the complementary policies are in sync. And, and there's obviously some Colorado examples with the regulatory policies. When we think of, our light and medium duty vehicles in Colorado, we've adopted the CARB LEV requirements. And, those LEV requirements are quite prohibitive and much more inclusive in that as of 2022 model year, it is prohibited in Colorado to sell or even to register a medium or light duty vehicle that doesn't meet those emission standards. The ZEV requirements or the zero emission requirements are structured very differently. Under those requirements that Colorado has now adopted as well, the burden really falls upon the manufacturer. And in that sense, what the manufacturer is obligated to do is, in the act of selling vehicles into Colorado, a certain percentage of those vehicles need to be zero emission vehicles. But that's the only obligation. It's to deliver for sale into Colorado. There's not an obligation that they be bought. There's not any obligation upon the consumer there. The California or the advanced clean truck requirements are more analogous to the ZEV requirements, but there's some difference there as well in that the way the ACT is set up, its compliance is shown once the manufacturer actually delivers the truck to an ultimate purchaser. So you can see there is an obligation upon the manufacturer to actually sell the vehicles. Of course, that creates some tension there for the requirement that the manufacturer have a purchaser of the vehicles. And then, of course, now California is looking at other sort of regulations that would work in tandem with that, such clean fleet requirements where there could potentially be obligations on fleet owners. But my point with all this is we talk about complementary policies, we talk about regulatory approaches, but we really need to make sure that those two things sync up and that we're thinking about all that as we put all this together.
Thank you, Clay. Our next question is directed at Sophie Schulman. What technological advances do you think are possible or likely in the near future in this sector?
Yeah, and I'll point back to the slide that Kay talked about, and she can certainly jump in as well. But I think, we see obviously a lot of potential, especially in, some sectors that are a little bit more advanced. So transit, for example, smaller, medium duty vehicles, we're seeing those folks on the road today. So there is a lot that is out there that we can start utilizing and start using in different use cases. And then, of course, there are some sectors that may be a little bit further out, but I think what we've seen on the light duty side is that has advanced much more quickly than we expected, and we are very hopeful about sort of how quickly this technology will improve over the next several years, and making sure that we start planning for those in those technologies that aren't quite ready yet, making sure that we're planning for the infrastructure needs that we do foresee. And that's exactly what we're trying to tackle with this strategy, is really starting to look at what will that infrastructure need be? What can we put in place today so that when that technology catches up, we're ready to start using those vehicles.
Thanks, Sophie. I'll just say that I appreciate the comments as well from folks on the line. We heard from some manufacturers who are giving us kind of great information about the products that they're developing, and also the Colorado natural gas folks as well. Renewable natural gas is in the mix here, and natural gas vehicles in the heavy duty sector are already available. So I think, the challenge is making sure that we have renewable sources of fuel for them here in the state. So, we're looking forward to working with you on that.
Thank you, Kay. Before we go to the next pre-submitted question, I want to remind folks that if you have a question that you've just thought of now, you can also use the hand raise feature in the control panel to put your hand up, and we'll put you in the queue. But right now, our next question is for Lauren McDonald. And the question is, will there be a focus on electrifying trucks and buses in lower income, high pollution impacted neighborhoods?
Thanks, Mike. The answer is yes. Climate equity is a lens that we're using for a lot of our policy decisions. And we're trying to make sure that it's part of the process, and that stakeholder engagement is robust and early on, and community input is part of that policy process. So the climate equity framework, as I mentioned earlier, is really meant to identify communities who are most impacted by climate change, and also to ensure that any benefits from a given policy are enhanced for them, that they experience those to a greater degree and sooner. And if there's any burdens, I think it was Ron Ash that brought up possibly the negative impacts on really, really small trucking companies and things like that. Those would be, those affect jobs, and those affect small businesses. So I think there's economic and health benefits that have to be considered as we're trying to find our way towards a clean energy future. So absolutely, low income and pollution impacted communities will be considered carefully.
Thank you, Lauren. Our next question is back to Sophie. It's related to what is the plan, what is the role of educating consumers on electricity as a fuel choice? And what role would auto dealers and technicians and other folks in that industry play in that education?
Sure. Yeah. And I think in this context, when we talk about consumers, we're talking about, fleet managers and the large fleets and smaller fleets, as we just talked about, that are considering these purchases. So I think, we would certainly take some of the lessons learned from the light duty side, where, making sure that folks are aware of available incentives, aware of the state of the technology, where there's opportunity to try these out. That education is certainly a critical component. I think it's going back to what Clay mentioned, that you can't, do any sort of, regulation without thinking about all the complementary policies that might go with it. So absolutely, that would be part of the conversation no matter what. And then, as I mentioned earlier, training for maintenance and our dealership workforces, I think is critical. We can't have these vehicles out on the road if there's nobody who can fix them. So that's certainly a key part of the conversation as well.
Great, thank you for that. Another one of the pre-submitted questions was about the role of renewable natural gas in this transition. I think that it's been touched on a few times, but I wanted to give Kay an opportunity if she'd like to weigh in on that.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. So renewable natural gas is something that can be produced from places like landfills and livestock operations and wastewater treatment plants. And, in a lot of cases, that methane that's being generated is either being vented to the atmosphere or being flared and, really wasted. So if there's, opportunities for us to make that into a usable product, like a fuel for vehicles, I think there's a good role for RNG, and it can play a nice part in our greenhouse gas strategy. And there are vehicles and vehicle segments that could be well suited to more of that natural gas engine, as opposed to battery electric or vice versa. It's not a one size fits all. So I think it's wise for fleets to be thinking about an array of different technologies and what works best for what their vehicles are are designed to do.
Okay, thank you, Kay. Another question that we just got was wondering about the source of the electricity for all these electric vehicles. You know, if it's coming from coal-fired power plants, is that really an improvement? And I wonder if Will Torr would like to address that.
Yeah, happy to speak to that. You know, that's a question which, you know, one sort of commonly gets in discussions around vehicle electrification, and it's one that, you know, 10 or 15 years ago was sort of a very real question, but the electricity sector is dramatically transitioning. If you look just in the last 2 months, you know, we have seen announcements of coal plant retirements, including, you know, the Rawhide plant in northern Colorado will be retired. Both of Colorado Springs Utilities coal plants will be retired. Earlier this year, Tri-State announced that they will be retiring all of their Craig coal plants. You know, we are very rapidly transitioning away from coal generation. Currently within Colorado, if you look at the average grid mix, there's already an air quality and climate benefit to transitioning to electric vehicles, but that benefit is just growing very rapidly. There's actually legal requirements that were put in place in the legislature in 2019 that for our largest utility, Xcel Energy, they have to achieve an 80% emissions reduction by 2030, and they'll be submitting that plan to the Public Utilities Commission in next March. But we anticipate that utilities representing over 95% of generation within the state will have approved plans within the next 2 years that will achieve, in some cases, up to 90% emissions reductions. So it's just a clear winner to move to electric today, and it's going to become a larger and larger win over time.
Thank you, Will. Another question that was mentioned during the comment period was related to renewably powered trains and what role that might have in this future. Sophie, do you want to address that?
Yeah, and you know, it's a very interesting idea. I can't say that I'm aware of any specific plans in Colorado to deploy something like that, but I will say that there are a lot of advances happening in, you know, train technology. There are things like battery-powered trains that are, you know, being developed, and so that's something that could eventually be powered through renewable energy as well. So that's, you know, I would say we're looking at everything on the table, and while the focus of this strategy in particular is really trucking and those types of vehicles, I think, you know, as we think more broadly about mobility, we're interested in all types of new technology that can help reduce emissions. So certainly feel free to send those ideas, and if there is more information about that technology, then feel free to send it to that Clean Truck Strategy email address, and we'll take a look at it.
Great, thank you. I also see a question that was submitted just now related to hydrogen. And I'm sorry, I lost the window with the actual question in it, but I believe it was along the lines of whether investment in hydrogen fueling infrastructure would be part of the state's approach. And I don't know if somebody would like to volunteer for that question. I can put it to Kay, if not.
Actually, Will, would you want to take that one?
Sure, happy to speak to it. So I think the question of, you know, what is the appropriate approach to zero emission vehicle infrastructure is something that we'll be exploring through this process. And, you know, I don't think that we've made decisions on that question. The MOU that we signed, and, you know, to date, the both tax incentives that have been created for zero emission vehicles in Colorado, and in the light duty arena, the zero emission vehicle rule that was adopted include both electric vehicles and hydrogen vehicles. And certainly I think we'll be exploring both of those going forward. You know, there may be certain vehicle classes where the technology winner is likely to be battery electric. There may be others where the ultimate technology winner may be on the hydrogen side. And I don't think that we are making any sort of predetermined conclusions on that. I would say that right now the largest likely source of near-term infrastructure funding will be through electric utilities pursuant to Senate Bill 77 and the transportation electrification plans. And so those are the largest likely near-term sources of funds. But that said, I think we're very interested in exploring where there can be additional sources of infrastructure funding. I would also note that in order to help answer these questions, the Energy Office is working on a technical analysis this year on the role of hydrogen in Colorado, developing what we're calling a hydrogen roadmap to try to get more information to guide these questions. And for folks who are interested in hydrogen, would be very interested in hearing your thoughts as we move forward on that hydrogen roadmap. It's a long-winded way of saying we see hydrogen as being integral and lots of questions still to answer.
Indeed. Well, thank you, Will, for that answer. We're going to give one last call for any additional questions. You can either raise your hand or you can submit the question through the chat. And seeing none at the moment, I will turn it back to Sophie Schulman. I'll also mention that you can submit additional questions and comments through the email address that we mentioned earlier, which is cleantruckstrategy@state.co.us. And that will be shared with you after this meeting, as well as it's included in the slides that you can see right now on the screen. So with that, I will turn it back to Sophie Schulman for some concluding words.
Great. Well, I just want to say thank you again to everyone for participating in this conversation. Again, this is not the last time that we will be talking about this. We hope you will participate in the future as we further develop this strategy. And as you can see in front of you, we do have 2 additional public meetings scheduled. We expect that the second meeting, I think, will have similar content to what you saw today. There may be a few different slides added in, but I would expect public meeting number 3 will have slightly different content. So just for your planning purposes of whether or not you need to attend multiple meetings. And then again, we will accept any comments through email at that Clean Truck Strategy email address. And please feel free to reach out to any of us with any thoughts or comments that we missed. So with that, I will again just say thank you and let everybody get along with their Thursday.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.